Hello and welcome to episode 95 of the Ego Chall Podcast. My name is Preston Byers, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Justin Binkowski. And on today's episode, we are talking MW3 after the launch last week. We have some really unfortunate and quite sad news about one of our favorite sites, or at least one of our most important sites in Call of Duty history. We have some really unfortunate news about Gamebattles. We have some roster announcements coming from the Carolina Royal Ravens and the Las Vegas Legion. We have some roster drama. Thankfully, there is supposedly a roster coming for the Los Angeles Guerrillas, but we'll get to that. We have some caster stuff. We have some players announcing that they're not going to be playing this season. Just a ton of stuff to talk about on this show. But before we get to any of it, how are you doing, Bink?
I'm doing well, and like you said, we got a packed show, so no reason to beat around the bush. Let's get into it.
Let's start with the MW3 launch because that is the biggest thing, at least globally, that we've been talking about and doing for the last 5 days or so. It came out really on Thursday when the New Zealand servers went online, and that pretty much opened the floodgates for players to do the New Zealand trick or just change their Activision account location to New Zealand to play Modern Warfare 3 early. So that was pretty much all of Thursday or Thursday night. If for us, we at least started playing on Thursday, and it globally launched at midnight, whatever time zone you're in, on Friday. And we've been playing pretty much all weekend and all early this week. I believe we're both level 55. We both got some gold guns. We both got to be annoyed by the game in some various ways, I'm sure. But we kind of want to go through some of the good and the bad things that we've noticed over the past 4 or 5 days from MW3. Starting with the bad first, so we can kind of get the bad news out of the way and then kind of end this part of the show on a good note. So I wrote down just a list of things that I think are not so great. One, the map pool is pretty bad, at least for pubs, because I haven't obviously played any competitive, and with ranked play probably not coming until January, probably not going to be playing a ton of competitive other than potentially CMG over the next few months. But the maps are not real great. Rust, Skid Row, and Scrapyard are really the only bearable ones for pubs for me. High Rise on occasion, Terminal on occasion, but really just a pretty poor set of maps for pubs. And that leads me into my next point, is that as far as competitive goes, there's not much wiggle room for the map pool right now. There are about 5 hardpoint maps that are in rotation, at least in scrims. There are, or potentially 6 actually, but I haven't seen High Rise played for hardpoint. And then you have Search. There are 5 Search maps, and I've only seen Karachi Control, and so I have no idea what Control is going to look like in this game in terms of competitive. And then the only other 2 things I had are Armory Unlock system and the skill-based matchmaking system. Do you agree, disagree on any of those points about the things that I think aren't the best in Modern Warfare 3?
In terms of the maps for pubs, I don't fully agree. I think it could be partially nostalgia, but I definitely like more than just those maps that you mentioned. Obviously, some of the maps that I just despise, like Wasteland and Derail, are still terrible to this day, but they were never great to begin with, even 14 years ago. So, but I definitely like some of those maps, and that's like Invasion, Karachi, High Rise, Terminal. Those are maps I played a lot of S&D on back in the day, and I have some good memories on those. So maybe I enjoy them a little bit more due to that, but yeah, I think more than 3 maps, but I do agree that there certainly are some maps that aren't great, and they weren't great to begin with, and they are still in this game and they aren't great. I will say though, as a caveat to that, even maps like Wasteland, Wasteland in particular looks really visually appealing to me. I thought it just wasn't good at all back in the day, and like visually speaking, I think it looks a lot better in this game. I still don't think it's a good map, but just like looking at it is a little bit more bearable and it's a little bit easier to see some things on it. It's still a nightmare with people in the grass and stuff like that, but um yeah, for pub speaking maps or whatever, I enjoy a couple more than you, I guess. But competitively, that's just something we've been talking about now for months during the off season. Is since we knew that the MW2 maps were coming, the biggest question was going to be what maps were going to be used for hardpoint, considering hardpoint wasn't a mode in the original MW2 when these maps were made. So I found by playing pubs that I remember a lot of these locations for hardpoints were headquarters spots when headquarters was a mode in MW2. I really liked headquarters back in the day. Um, that was something I would play in pubs, and in particular, I think you were playing with us on launch night when I said it. Like on Terminal, there's the hard point now in Burger Town, the little restaurant, and it's like tucked away in a corner there. And I remember that being a headquarters location on Terminal way back in the day. So that was like funny to me, and it doesn't surprise me at all that they would take some inspiration from that. I think if I remember headquarters correctly, I don't think it was the same rotation every game. If it was, I was probably too young and naive to actually acknowledge it. But I don't think it was like a set rotation, but it had like multiple points where the headquarters could spawn in each game, and that's what like one of the spots was where some of these hard point locations have been, at least if I'm remembering correctly. So that's interesting. But yeah, competitively speaking, that's just been the biggest thing since day one, since we knew these MW2 maps were coming, is how's Hardpoint going to play on these maps where Hardpoint didn't exist. The one thing I was saying over these weeks is that I didn't know if Scrapyard was going to make the cut, even though it's a map I really like, simply because I thought it was going to be too small and I thought it was going to play too fast with the current movement. But I am definitely happy that it seems like players are giving it a shot and it could potentially make the cut. Because again, I do think it's a good map, but it definitely is one of the smaller options. And I think no matter what, because obviously Rust isn't going to be competitive, if Scrapyard is to make it, I think it would undoubtedly be the smallest map in the map pool. So that would probably be like, I don't think it would play like Bokage, but it would probably be a map similar to where we saw like very high kill numbers in Vanguard. It could be the map that we potentially see high kill numbers in MW2. Or I guess on the continent, no, I feel like it's a pretty safe bet that would be the map that has the highest engagements if we get like a 250, 249 game. But I could also see there being some like blowouts on that map where they end very quickly just due to the size, and if teams are like able to chain rotations very easily just because there isn't as much space to rotate, right? Like even a team like FaZe, um, they could hold you for full 60 and they could not rotate and then just break the hill within the first 5 seconds because the other hill is very close to where the last one is just due to the map size, and then get like 50 seconds on the next hill. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays. I did play Control actually on Scrapyard last night, and the one control point was in L tube in the middle, and the other one was in the building to the right of it. Um, if you're facing the defending spawn and search, which might not mean anything to anybody, but I can't. The big building that has 3 stories. If you're facing that building, L tube in the middle, and the building to the right is where the other control point was. And I don't know how that would play. Competitively, it felt like it was very just. It was also 6v6, and it was in pubs, so can't really take too much away from it. But it felt very like offensively favored, and I'm pretty sure we won that game 3-0 with only 3 of us playing, so it was kind of a stomp, but that could have been an SBMM thing, kind of like you were mentioning. I know there have been complaints about that. I haven't really encountered anything. There've been a couple lobbies where, I got fried and tucked to bed, but I haven't felt like there's been anything egregious on a SBMM front for me, but I know other people have been complaining, so that's just something that doesn't seem like Activision's going to be addressing anytime soon, and it seems like something we're going to have to deal with as a community for as long as it stays around. So, yeah, and the only other thing you mentioned, the armory unlocks. I kind of like the system. I know that might be a little bit of a hot take. Don't get me wrong. I definitely think it's incredibly stupid and just terrible design to even have the possibility of a challenge that is needed to use something that features an unlock from said challenge system, which the biggest thing is people are getting challenges for Semtex kills and flash grenade usage, and they can't do those challenges because they need to complete the challenges to unlock flashes and Semtex. I think if the armory system challenges were just straightforward and didn't include stuff like that, that I wouldn't have a problem with it. It would give me a reason to play more. I don't think there is anything wrong with the traditional system of, just leveling up and unlocking everything. And I don't think they needed to reinvent the wheel in that regard. But I don't hate the system as much as other people might. That also could be due to the fact that I initially didn't get one of those flash or Semtex challenges. So I was able to unlock several items on launch day, because once you do your 3 dailies, the bonus challenges just win a game, and we were obviously going on a lot of win streaks on our launch night. So I was fortunate in that sense, and I didn't get affected by the issues that other people have had with like the Semtex and the flashbangs. But that aside, I still don't think I don't think that should be a part of the system. But if the challenges were, you could even make them a little harder, I guess. Like maybe even if you, instead of like getting 2 flashbangs, you did like 50 kills with a battle rifle or something. I know I had one yesterday for like 7 kills with a battle rifle, and that was pretty easy. So like if you increase the number, like I'm never gonna use that battle rifle probably unless I get another challenge like that. But stuff like that doesn't require you to use something specific, especially something that needs to be unlocked by the challenge system. That's where the problem lies in the current system. So yeah.
Yeah, I think with the armory unlock system, the biggest issue I have is just one, like you mentioned, it's just illogical to put something in a challenge when you have to use that thing. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But I also just don't think that, like, why not just have everything be able to be unlocked by just leveling up, or putting the armory unlock system on just a win-loss set of circumstances. So like what you said, when you get done with your daily challenges, then every additional win accounts essentially as another challenge that you've completed, and you can level up that way. I think that is the much better system than get 20 kills with an LMG and then you can unlock this gun. Just have people win games. Maybe that'll get people to focus more on the objective and try to win the game rather than get kills with certain weapons, which can obviously lead to losing games, and then it just makes it a more frustrating experience for everyone else. And I think they could even, if they wanted to, tie in cosmetic items, it doesn't need to be some flashy, like ridiculously good cosmetic, but say for this day, if you complete all of your challenges or whatever, you get a certain weapon camo. And that gives people an incentive to log on every day and do their challenges, because then they get this somewhat exclusive weapon camo, and maybe that'll entice people into doing it. But yeah, I think it's not the end of the world. It's probably been more annoying for some other people because their daily challenges weren't working properly, which then creates so many issues with not only XP, but then you can't actually unlock the weapons that you wanted to or you need to do whatever you want to do in the game. Although there is, the workaround of zombies and you can exfil and stuff, which is cool, I guess, but I'm not someone that's really big into zombies. Maybe you have thoughts on that, because I know that this is a completely different system. This is essentially zombies, and DMZ had a baby and they have now made Modern Warfare zombies. So your first impressions of this new zombie system? I know that Nick at 30, he's pretty much said like this is one of the best zombie systems since like BO3. So I guess, do you agree with that statement?
I do not,
Okay.
and I will. I saw Noah J456 posted something earlier today about how much it's growing on him as well. So maybe I do have to play it some more. But just as a short TLDR is my experience. I after hitting level 55 on Friday, I decided on Saturday I would try zombies for the first time. In my first game, I equipped my ACR that I had fully leveled in gold, and I was gonna try and do some of those challenges to get it gold in zombies. I loaded into the zombies map, and the starting area is pretty easy. It felt like like an episode of The Walking Dead in one of the later seasons where you're just running around and the walkers are just walking and not really doing much, and you can just kill them and move on. But um, I decided to start a contract, which I don't remember. It was something I had to defend something or something along those lines. And I was completely oblivious to the fact that there are AI soldiers in the mode. So I was going to defend whatever the mission was, and I started getting shot by bullets in the back. And it was the first time I'd been shot in a zombies game. I guess that's actually a lie, because it was some boss zombie in one of the games that had like a minigun or something like that. But regardless of that, I was unexpectedly getting shot in zombies, and I died, and I wasn't. I was like, what the hell just happened? Um, and then because of the DMZ-esque feature of the zombies, you lose your gun that you enter with on an hour cooldown. So I wasn't able to use my ACR in the next game. So I went in with like one of the recommended guns or whatever. And then the map is broken down into low threat, medium threat, and high threat zones. In my second game, I decided to just wander into the medium zone just to see what that was about. And I died very quickly because it was a very drastic difference between how many bullets it takes to kill a zombie in the low threat mode and the high threat or medium threat zone. I haven't even gone in the high threat zone, so I can't even imagine how much more difficult that would be. But using a starter gun that didn't have any attachments definitely was not ideal for that second zone. But then by my third zone, I decided to just take it easy, uh, explore a little bit in that low threat zone, and I did I did some random contracts that turned out to be easier than whatever the first one I did was. Um, and I was able to get through that one. So eventually, I played a couple more games. I got to get to the mystery box, the pack a punch. That made things pretty easy. And then I figured out that I saw somebody when I was trying to exfil, because it's now timed. You can only play 45 minutes, I think, or if you don't exfil within that 45 minutes, you basically lose what you had. So like my timer was running down in like my fourth or fifth game, and I was going to an exfil zone on the map, and I saw some guy just like killing all the zombies, and he wasn't exfilling. So like I kind of just waited there as long as I could, and then I exfilled. And my next game, I went back to another exfil area, and I realized what that person was doing was they were just because when you exfil, a shit ton of zombies will spawn in, and he was just like trying to get the closest experience to an old zombies game in this like a higher round experience where he was just running in a circle, training the zombies and killing them, and then he wouldn't exfil. He would leave, come back, trigger the exfil again, and do that over and over again to just kill a ton of zombies. At the end of the day, that's all I'm trying to do in a zombies mode. I'm trying to relax and run around, see how many zombies I can kill. I don't care as much about the mission aspect of it and stuff like that. So once I figured that method out, that was pretty fun. But yeah, I think especially if all these other people are starting to say it's growing on them, maybe I gotta give it another not give it another chance, because I don't totally hate it. But I guess I gotta give it more of a chance and play it a little more to see if it'll grow on me as well.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of positive buzz, but there was a lot of really positive thoughts about DMZ and MW2, at least from the players that played it. Like I know that when I went home for I think it was Christmas last year, my cousin was talking about it. He was like, "Have you played DMZ?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't." And he's like, "Well, it's really good." And I was like, "Jesus!" Like you never hear this about modern Call of Duty, about people actually being like, "Oh yeah, that's really fun." Maybe Warzone, but like not so much lately in Warzone. That's more like the first iteration. But you know, I think it's cool. I think people probably should have the ability to experience that old zombies feel if they want that, and then have this on top. But I get that there are only so many developers, and according to that Bloomberg report, they were on like a pretty serious time crunch in terms of how long they got to develop this entire game, and the different developers, that the different studios that are developing each game mode. It could make a lot of that can make a lot of work for very few people. So understandably, they can't just do everything for everyone. But I think you probably will play a lot of zombies, at least early on, and then if you are really out on it, I'm sure I won't hear you talk about zombies at all for the rest of the year, kind of like the last few years. Um, let's talk about the good though before we move on, because I think there are some good things. One is like a really small thing in theory, but really big personally. The sounds of the game are actually pretty nice. I know Tremor mentioned this when we were playing on Friday, but the headshot and the hit marker, the sounds of those are very satisfying in game, which can go a long way, even though it sounds pretty small. One of the bigger things is the meta right now, and of course this can and definitely will change at least somewhat over the next month or two. And we don't even know what the first patch will look like and what will exactly be in that, and what weapons will be balanced, and if that'll change the competitive meta. But right now, 3 guns are actually being used in total. So we have the Rival 9 is the meta submachine gun, because the Striker got nerfed after the beta. That was the and it was by and far away the best sub in the beta. But now the Rival 9 is the best. And then as far as ARs go, there's kind of a split. We initially had the Holger, and that looked to be the best, and then the pros GA'd that. And then 2 burst ARs. One was the FAMAS. They also got GA'd because they could essentially one burst you, and that just wasn't going to fly. And then all of the MW2 guns, of course, were GA'd as well, something that you mentioned would probably happen on the last episode. So right now we have the MTZ and the MCW. The MCW is the ACR that you were talking about. And those 2 guns are the assault rifles being used in scrims right now. The MCWs are the classic AR, kind of a slower, even though it like you can actually move around with it, but it's a little bit slower, and it packs a little more damage. And the MTZ is the closest thing, in my opinion, to the Maddox that we've had since Black Ops 4, where it definitely feels like a submachine gun, but it is technically an AR. You can move a little bit faster. It's a little bit weaker than MCW, but comparable enough to where players are actually using it on a consistent basis. So if we could get a 3-gun meta, that would be incredible, just to see what flexes, kind of what effect they have on the game. And I think that the BO4 meta was probably our best in terms of having the Maddox, the SOG, and the ICR, I believe it was that year, and that was really fun. I do think the pub maps that are good are really good, and they're a lot of fun. I've been trying to do camo challenges, so that hasn't been great, and I've been losing my mind with tax dance. But
I told you.
yeah, but I think overall it's been fun. I think I've gotten like 3 or 4 of the ARs gold and the Striker gold. So that it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, I don't know if you had any thoughts on the guns and the meta being used right now.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the ACR. I really like the MTZ as well. When I was leveling that up, I basically used that as soon as I unlocked it up until the point that I unlocked the Holger at 37.
Hmm.
I don't remember what level you unlock the MTZ, but it was pretty early on. So I was using the first AR. Whenever I got the MTZ, I immediately started using that, and I used that basically up until I got the Holger. So I do like the Holger as well. It feels really good. I can see why it was GA'd. Maybe it just needs a little tweak, so it's un-GA'd, and then that could be an interesting twist to the meta as well. But I definitely like the MCW and MTZ. I have not used the Rival 9 yet. It seems like that is where people are going for in terms of the meta sub at this point. I haven't used it yet at all. I haven't even used the Striker. I've really only used the ARs. I got them all max level, and I just need to do the final gold challenge for the 2 burst guns, and then I'll have all the ARs gold. But um, yeah, so maybe tonight I gotta play some more zombies and try out the rivals so I can see what that's all about once we do another show.
Yeah, it's got some crazy recoil, but once you get the attachments, it's kind of nice. Um, but yeah, I think overall, the game is essentially what I thought it would be in the beta. There are some good things, there are some bad things. I don't think that I guess the praise that it's getting is, I think, a little undue because some people are saying that this is the best COD game since Black Ops 3. So that's the best COD game in like 7, 8 years, right? I don't think that's correct at all. Like, I would much prefer to play BO4 another year than to play this game. Of course, I really only played BO4 and Modern Warfare 2019 since then, and then a little bit of well, I guess World War II was after that as well. I mean, I hated World War II, but I've only played a few games. I didn't play every single COD game since BO3, but I think people need to temper down some of their expectations and their praise about it just a little bit. But I do find it a little bit enjoyable that people are actually being more positive about the game in general this year than in past years. I think last year might have been the absolute worst. The first week buzz was just all negative, and that can really bring down everybody's spirits, even if you're not playing it and just watching it. And the last thing I'll say has been it's been a lot of fun to watch scrims and the tourneys that have been happening over the last few days. Especially the scrims, you'll see tournaments here and there probably throughout the entire season, even though there won't be as many people, or like the level of player streamer might not be streaming it, but the scrims have been very, very fun. Watched a few Carolina scrims. I watched Temp's team scrim, so he's teaming with Spart, TJ, and Proloot, and Jerd, which I mentioned to you in the work chat today. Jerd is actually coaching them this year, which was very surprising. I was not expecting
Yeah.
that. Like I said to you, I was so confused. I heard this, like, he doesn't have like a real like strong accent, but you can tell he's like Irish, Scottish, or English or something. And I was like, who is this guy? Like, and then his name popped up on the screen. So I think that's awesome. Like you mentioned, he played with Temp on Splice in BO4, and I'm sure he knows TJ for a while now. So, cool to see him back in the scene. But just the entire idea of streaming scrims, I'm always in favor of. I know it won't last. It's more of like a first month thing, and when we get closer to the actual events, then they will pretty much be non-existent. But at the moment, it is a lot of fun. Any
I
last
I would
thoughts?
I would just say on the scrim front, I think especially with some of these um teams like you mentioned the temp team, we've talked about that Bance team with
Yeah.
some strong EU players. We're gonna talk about Havok later, but Havok would have been a good example too. Somebody like Parasite as well. Obviously, when you're playing the pros, if they were to scrim the pro teams closer to the season, which I don't think they really would do that much anyway, I feel like in recent years the pros have really just scrimmed the pros, especially during the season. But regardless, outside of scrimming the pros, these amateur teams should be streaming their scrims like
Yeah.
as much as possible. You don't want to stream your S&D. You want to cover the mini map or something like that to try and keep things under wraps and break offs, whatever. I get that. But there's just so much potential value in growing your brand through streaming these scrims, especially like you said, it creates some hype and excitement as well. Um, so I hope that continues to happen for as long as possible. And potentially with, who really knows what's going to go on with challengers with the game battles news. Um, these challengers players might really need to have a place to stream and create content anyways, especially if there aren't as many tournaments or whatever. That's just speculation. But yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Um, like it's the best way to make income essentially. Like if you're going to be competing and you're going to be practicing all of this time and putting in this much effort into competing, but you're in challengers, so you're not receiving a salary like a CDL player would. The best way to play and make money is to stream. And yeah, like some guys just have the personality where they could be playing pretty much any game or pretty much anything in COD and they would get viewers, but the it's not realistic for everybody. Like people want to watch scrims, they want to watch eights, they want to watch tournaments because people want to watch competition, and that's kind of the gist of it. Like, the reason I tuned into Temp's stream in particular today was he was scrimming with his team, and I was like, oh, I want to see how this team is, and they scrimmed Minnesota and then they scrimmed Vegas, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I get to see two pro teams, and I get to see this team full of ex pros, and you get to hear them discuss things after the map and kind of figure out how to improve during a map. That stuff is very entertaining, not only to me, but a lot of people. That's what a lot of people would probably want to see out of a stream in 2023. I don't think pub stomping is really going to get you super far in terms of content, unless you're like a Warzone streamer or something. But, competitive, this is kind of the way to do it. Something you mentioned and something that really was a big blow to competitive COD this week was the announcement that Gamebattles will be shutting down as of January 15th, 2024. So just over 2 months from now. Gamebattles announced yesterday that the site will be shutting down in January and that all like payouts and credits will be, able to be like claimed until the very end of January in 2024. I said it in the work chat when we were talking about this among you, me, and Scott, but I said like this is like a literally historic day in competitive COD history because there's so much history that is tied to game battles over the years. You think about PCLs back in the day. This is over 15 years ago, but those were through game battles. Obviously, the game battle ladders have been legendary throughout the days. One of the biggest, at least content, game battles related things I can think of was the Road to 100-0 with Optic, and that was like Nade Shot, Scump, Fwiz, and all of them. So that was really big. Obviously, pretty much all of competitive COD has been based around game battles. Not really so much since the CWL and CDL have taken over, but 2Ks and 5Ks used to be all the rage. Every single weekend, essentially, there would be another game battles tournament for pros to play on. So, this is a really, really big blow. I kind of wanted to get your thoughts and feelings on this as someone who is older than me, who's more experienced than me, has played a lot more game battles than me. What are your feelings on game battles shutting down in January?
Yeah, this is a really difficult one for me. Obviously there are people who have earned a lot of money on game battles and won tournaments and stuff like that. I wasn't I probably wasn't good enough to win too much money or tournaments anyway, but I physically couldn't do it because Connecticut was one of the states where you weren't allowed to play in wagers or anything like that until like gambling laws changed recently. Um, but I just looked and I have over 3,200 matches played on my one account now. I had an account uh get banned my first one for I was giving free wins to one of my friends and I got banned for that, which is pretty stupid in hindsight, but um nonetheless, that account got wiped. So I don't remember how many matches I played on that one, but it's with over 3,200 on this one account from 2014, it's probably safe to say I played close to 35 between 3,500 and 4,000 GB matches in over the last 14, 15 years. So it's been a pretty big part of my life, and I got up. I think I was a high 1K or a low 2K. I can't remember exactly what my highest rank was. But then once the Jetpack games came out, I started playing with some of my IRL friends and not taking it as seriously. And my rank really tanked. And over the last couple of years, I've worked really hard. Shout out Tremy to try and get my rank back up to where it once was, and I'm at a 3K now. So my goal is going to be over these next couple months to get it as high as I possibly can before it all shuts down. But yeah, it's been a really big part of my life, and I know it's been a bigger part of other people's lives in a lot more ways than it's affected me. But it's a very meaningful site to me, and I'm gonna miss it. Like I wasn't even able to access the CMG site when CMG first started because like the the laws in Connecticut, it wouldn't even let me on the site or sign up for it. So I don't even have an account on there. So if we do move over to there, I'm gonna have to start from scratch. But um, I definitely I have a lot of fond memories from game battles over the years, and it's definitely uh was some news I wasn't expecting and something I'm gonna miss.
Yeah, I don't think it really makes a ton of sense. So I think the I think Activision Blizzard, they bought MLG and Gamebattles in, I think it was 2017, and I think the price point was like 46 million or something along those lines, in the 40s. And now MLG is dead. There was that one tweet or whatever in the off season that got people a little bit hopeful, but there's been nothing since then. And now Game Battles is shutting down in 2 months. So that was a really good investment, don't you think? $45 million or whatever, just to completely ruin two very legendary brands in competitive gaming. Game Battles, been around for decades, has launched careers, not only like competitive COD players, obviously, but obviously, there's been a bunch of games on Game Battles, and I think that Fwiz has probably made it the best out of anyone because he was literally a GB ref back in the day, and then he ascended to the head of YouTube gaming, and now I think he's doing some blockchain thing. But like, just to think that a lot of people's lives and careers have been affected, and positively affected by game battles, and just kind of for it to go away. Of course, it has been de-emphasized a lot over the years. A lot of missed opportunities for GB. Maybe not so much by the people at GB, but at the higher ups. We had game battles integration for one game, right? I think it was World War II. That was the only game that you had like an in-game. You could actually play game battles through the game and not have to like set it up after or like beforehand.
They had it in MW 2019 too, and in IW.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I don't remember it at all in 2019. Was it broken or something?
there were definitely issues I remember, but I'm pretty sure I remember it being a part of that,
Yeah.
unless I'm just
Yeah.
remembering.
So, well, even then, so let's say it's World War II, IW, and MW 2019. Um, it seems like that should be just a given. Like if Activision Blizzard owns Call of Duty, they own all of the title, all the IP for that. And they also own Gamebattles. Gamebattles is literally there to set up online matches with other people in private games. And those two things fit perfectly together. And yet it hasn't been integrated into a COD game in years. It hadn't to that point until World War II. I think it was the first one. Maybe it was IW. I can't remember off the top of my head. It would have probably been, which one was first? What, IW?
IW or what?
World War II.
IW. IW was the first jetpack or
So
jetpack.
So we had like until whatever 2016 or 2017, it was not a part of Call of Duty. And then they started off really strong once everything became under the Activision Blizzard banner, and now it's been gone for years, and it's literally going away in 2 months. I just think this has been a horrible mismanagement by Activision Blizzard on a lot of fronts. I tweeted about it yesterday, but I said that my dream is that MLG will come back once the CDL dies, or what, not like necessarily dies in like terms of everybody goes bankrupt, or like essentially what the Overwatch League is going through right now, where the owners just like wipe their hands clean. Okay, we're gonna get out. We don't want to pay people anymore. We're just gonna leave the scene. When that probably inevitably happens, to be honest, my dream is that MLG comes back because it is still owned by Activision Blizzard, and we could unite some of the classic, console-based games under that banner and essentially make a pro circuit again. Call of Duty and Halo being the first obvious candidates for that. And then maybe Gears of War as well, because Gears of War and Halo are owned by Microsoft, and now Activision Blizzard is owned by Microsoft. So that could be something that could legitimately happen. It wouldn't be the end of the world. I don't know about Gears of War, but the Halo and Call of Duty one seem very feasible to me, and I do think there is quite a bit of crossover in terms of the fan bases and even the player bases, as we've seen with Frosty coming back, coming to COD, then going back to Halo. Formal being one of the best Call of Duty players ever, and also one of the best Halo players ever. So I do think there are a lot of crossover there, and we could benefit all from kind of uniting and taking ideas from each other's, because I think Halo probably has the better system in place right now than Call of Duty. But I think Call of Duty is generally the more popular and more successful esport. Circling back to the GB thing, it's just really disappointing. Seems very unnecessary, and it calls into question a lot of what's going to happen with Challengers this year, because Challengers was based on Gamebattles. Like the online cups and everything were done through the GB system, and where does that leave the Challengers scene? I put it in the work chat today, but there's like a legitimate non-zero chance that Challengers will not be at least under the Activision umbrella for this year. I don't 100% believe that they plan this out at any point. Obviously, the people at GB had nothing to do with this. This is more of a higher up decision about, hey, we don't want to spend this much money on this website that doesn't make us as much money as we probably thought we would, or thought it would. But I mean, it's going to suck. And I think that there was a tweet about Challengers, about like they're kind of reassessing, or they're going to make an announcement at some point about the future of Challengers, or what's going to happen now that GB is going away. I just think it's so bad that it's going to mess up so many people, especially if Challengers isn't a thing under Activision this year. We don't even have college COD now, which was kind of like the Challengers, almost like minor league. It was, if you want to consider Challengers to be AAA, then college COD seem to be almost double A at this point, or some kind of mixture, because we did have Ghosty, one of the best rookies in the league. He was in the college Call of Duty league, and I think eFuse pretty much shut down essentially, or shut that down. So there's nothing there. There might not be challengers as we know it. The CDL is the 12th team in the CDL has barely said anything over the past 7 months. So it's just not a great time for competitive COD in general in terms of the league structure and the path to pro. But yeah, I'm kind of rambling and just a little frustrated with everything. Any last thoughts or opinions about the GB stuff and the effect it might have as we progress towards its eventual demise?
No, I think that's the biggest thing. And going back to what I originally said, obviously I'm gonna miss the site, and I appreciate everyone who worked on the site over the years and gave me the opportunity to play so many countless matches on that. But definitely, like I said, it's affected other people's lives in a much bigger way than my own. And especially with the uncertainty of challengers and all that right now, it could have massive ramifications on the Challengers season this year. So I'm just hoping everything gets resolved in a way that works out for the community, and we'll have to see where that takes us.
Yep. Next, let's talk about some rosters. First, we have Vegas, and this is not much of a surprise because we had gotten those reports about the potential roster. Attached, Nero, Standy, and Purge were officially announced as the Las Vegas Legion's 2024 CDL roster. I think really, like, we talked quite a bit about this team, or this a different iteration of this team, which was supposedly going to include Mac before he announced that he was not going to play to start this season. So I'm not really sure how many thoughts we actually have on the roster, but the AI graphic that was included with this Legion announcement was not well received by the community, if you could believe it. The Legion, who have been notoriously cheap, would probably be putting it nicely, or cost efficient. Maybe that's the best way to put it. A team that has been made fun of for not spending much money in the past. They did not apparently decide to shell out for a graphic designer, and they instead asked an AI like image bot to make them graphics for each of their players. And yeah, it wasn't very well received. I was actually watching Attach's stream at the time that the announcement came out, and he was very confused why he had earrings on in the picture. And I believe it was Purge said that he looked like a Fortnite character. And the team actually didn't even know that the announcement was actually going to happen at that time. They were surprised mid-scrim that the team was announced on Twitter. So just a masterclass of management by the Las Vegas Legion. Were you a big fan of the AI graphic? I was a big fan of it, to be honest.
I honestly didn't even see the graphics until just now when I looked at the tweet. That's pretty funny. And I definitely I saw the rumblings about it, but I didn't even really like connect the dots and think about the thought of using AI as opposed to spending money on a graphic designer. It is a pretty funny coincidence, or not a coincidence, depending on your thoughts on Vegas as an organization. But yeah, that's definitely an interesting one. If you had COD roster announced through AI on your bingo card for 2023, congratulations, you can check that one off. But yeah, we talked about this roster the last 2 episodes now. Like you said, 2 episodes ago was when we had the rumor it was Mac. Last episode we had the report that it was going to be Nero coming in with Purge, Standy, and Attach. I still don't know much about Purge, but I've talked enough praise about Attach and Standy at this point. I think Nero is pretty good too. So interested to see how this team works. But yeah, I don't think there's really much more to say on that roster right now.
Yep. Another one that we talked about quite a bit on the last episode at least, was the Carolina Royal Ravens. They officially announced their roster as well. Clayster, Gwyn, Godorex, and Real. We will get confirmation eventually about actually how to say his name. But this roster has a little bit of veteran leadership. Godorex has been around quite a bit. Clayster, obviously one of the best Call of Duty players of all time. And then you have Gwyn and Real making their, I don't know if this is probably their CDL debut. Both really young guys, a lot of promise. But I think the biggest story here, again, similar to the Legion announcement, it's kind of the extracurricular stuff that ends up being the more noteworthy thing, and that was Gwyn's mom actually leaking the roster like she's Jacob Hale or something. Mom Gwyn bomb or something. Maybe we should try to hashtag that at some point. But she leaked it literally like a week before they announced it. And Gwyn, he tweeted, why do parents make Twitters? And he posted an image that says rage is consuming me. So I thought it was very funny. Yeah. So I don't know if you had any other thoughts about Carolina, because we did talk about it quite a bit last week.
Yeah, talked a lot about them. Feel like I've been seeing some like the CDL Scrim Intel account has been posting some scores and stuff, so I haven't been looking too much into them, but I feel like I've seen some decent ones out of this squad. So I talked enough about it. Really like Clay, really happy Godorex is getting another chance. And excited to see what Real, whatever, however you say it, and Gwyn get their shot in the league as well. But there was this funny tweet I just threw in the notes here from Clayster of somebody complaining about Carolina after the rebrand keeping Royal Ravens as the name. The random Twitter user says, was the Royal part of Royal Ravens because the team was in London? Now it doesn't make sense. And another Twitter user goes, Charlotte is called the Queen City of the Carolinas because of its centrality, economic importance. The fact it was named after Queen Charlotte still fits. And Clay simply just goes retweet on that. So I thought that was pretty funny, especially in times where we're having these rebrands and people are questioning stuff about, the necessity of location-based teams and all that. I thought that was a funny interaction. But yeah, another roster I think we've talked enough about at this point. Now it's official for both Vegas and Carolina. And I'm looking forward to seeing how both these teams do compared to some of these other squads that were formed a little bit earlier than them.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest rebrand thing that probably needed to happen was the Legion's logo, because it's literally one of the French, I think they're called like La Fleas or something. I didn't take French in high school, so give me a break on that. But it has no relation to Vegas at all. But, neither did the Legion really. So LAG, that was something today. The last 2 days, actually, that's kind of been the talk of the competitive COD space, other than GB's unfortunate announcement. So LAG reportedly were going to sign Gunless, Asim, Diamondcon, and Kremp for their roster, and that was as of yesterday, right? And then today, I believe, LAG reportedly switched to Diamondcon, Assault, Fame, and Estriel, with Vios as coach and Flames as their substitute. So this caused a bunch of pretty snarky comments from people, and just a lot of like drama, because I think it's undeniable that the Gunless and Asim are more well known than pretty much anybody else on this team. Like, of course, Kremp and Diamondcon, they are former pro players. Kremp was on Boston last year. Diamondcon, part of that not original, but he was on New York at some point, and he was on LAG Academy as well. But Gunless and Asim are both very popular players, very well-liked players by other current and former players. And it was just kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of weird to see people so negative about another roster coming into LAG. And so now we have Diamond Con, Assault Fame, and Estriel reportedly being targeted for LAG's roster. And there's been a lot of debate about Vios as the coach there, because I think it might have started with the Zuma stuff, like Zuma saying like, who is he? Who is he? And I think that's a little bit disrespectful. Like, I understand it could be a legitimate thing, but it does come off as disrespectful when you're doing it on stream when other people are already saying he was LAG Academy's coach. Like, that's who he is. And then the enable thing really blew up. That was the more well-known kind of, like, he says it's a joke, and like I'll take him at his word for it. Like, I don't think he was being entirely serious, but people definitely took it as him being serious. And essentially, what he said was, he sounds like he sucks. Who is, like, he essentially echoed like, who is he? He's like a nobody, blah blah blah. And again, that, like, again, it if for the people who didn't think he was joking, it came off as very disrespectful and very like mean spirited, that one of Enable's friends essentially got screwed out of a spot. And Vios may have been, according to what Asim said on Zuma stream, Vios was actually the one that decided to change the roster because he got hired by LAG, and he immediately went with this new roster of Diamond Con, Assault Fame, and Estriel, which would make a little more sense because, like I tweeted, in traditional sports, coaches come in, they get hired, and what do? They hire their staff, the staff that they want. And if you're a pro team, you go and sign players that you know or are familiar with, that can help you install a system or instill a culture in your team. It's not very much seen in competitive COD, I would say, but it actually tracks with how traditional sports act and how things go there. So Vios apparently comes in, he changes the roster, and that leads to a lot of hurt feelings, but a lot of defenses, people being in defense of Vios as well. Clayster, who was briefly coached by him in Challengers, Marky B, who is the outgoing LAG head coach, and he actually tweeted that he had been in consideration for the upcoming LAG head coaching spot, and that he pretty much figured out when the Vios report came out that he was not actually going to be the coach. Fellow, who also was coached by Vios, he defended him. So there was just a lot of kind of back and forth there. I kind of want to get your thoughts on that, on this whole situation, because it is very messy, and of course nothing is technically confirmed at this point. It's all just reports and stuff. But your thoughts on LAG changing course for their roster and all of the drama surrounding the coach?
Yeah, I don't think, obviously I'm not going to pretend to know much about VOs, but I do think it's an interesting point, kind of like you said, like traditional sports, new coach comes in, he's going to bring in the guys he thinks is going to help the team and perform the best. I think what's happening in this situation, or what has happened, and obviously this is speculation, but with the initial reported or rumored roster featuring Gunless and Asim, those are two guys I myself was excited to see back in the league, especially Gunless. But I've talked multiple episodes on this podcast about how highly I think of Asim. So him getting another chance, I would have been excited for. And Gunless, I've thought very highly of him all the way back to when he was really making a name for himself at the start of IW. I just think he's a really talented player, and would have been excited to see him back in the league. But I think what's happening in this situation is, not to blame anybody or anything like that, but it feels like some of these older pros, like you've mentioned, Zuma, and Enable, who have previously played with guys like Gunless and Asim on their teams when they were competing, they probably are just a little upset, or feel that some of their friends were done dirty or, got the short end of the stick, however you want to phrase it. And whether they're, like Knable is joking or not, that could play a factor in his opinions on the new roster that reportedly is replacing some of his former teammates and stuff like that. So that's what I think might be happening. Might be a little, embellished at this point and a little bigger than making it a bigger deal than it really is. But I think this really just puts a spotlight on LAG and Vios as a whole now more than ever. The biggest thing he can do now in this situation, if he's officially signed, is try to go out there and prove all these people who are doubting him wrong. And that'd be a pretty cool storyline, especially with everything going on with LAG behind the scenes and the layoffs, and especially now that Carolina and Vegas are officially announced. LAG is the only team that hasn't officially announced a roster, so when they announce, they'll be the last team to do it. So basically, they would be starting from the bottom really, and got a long road ahead of them. But it would be a really cool storyline, especially for Vios' sake and some of these players, if they were able to prove some of the doubters wrong. But even with this new team, you and I got to talk to Assault a bunch at Columbus Champs. I've always, that's Patty P's son before Patty P really retired. So I've always thought highly of Assault as well. And it makes sense if he was a former LAG Academy coach. Obviously, Assault and those guys had some success. Dominic was on that team with him last year too, and he was the only one who didn't get called up to the main LAG roster when they made the initial changes at the start of the year. So it makes sense that some of those guys that have seen success with this with Vios as a coach are now potentially getting a shot with him again, just on the big stage. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out for LAG if it's all confirmed. But I think at the end of the day, it could be a positive thing for LAG. Obviously, if they come out and just are really bad, that's not going to look great. But they can kind of use this as motivation to try and prove some people wrong, and that could lead to some interesting storylines. So we'll get to see how it all plays out in just a couple months.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of people saying whatever they want, regardless of the result. Whether they win their first match or they lose their first match, that will be something that people will actually be anticipating just so they can get off the little pot shots here and there. Last two things that we have on this show, actually three things. I forgot to put one in the notes. But one, Lando stepping away from the Call of Duty League. He was a commentator for the last few seasons. He was Study's broadcast partner. He announced last week that he will not be re-signing with the CDL this season. So that's unfortunate. I think he showed a lot of promise, and I think he improved quite a bit from his first time commentating in the CDL to eventually, I guess, his last time at Champs 2023. So best of luck to him. I think if you want to see his whole explanation and kind of his reasoning and just kind of like him thanking people essentially, go to his YouTube, and he has a video up there talking about it. Did you have any thoughts on that, about Lando stepping away?
Yeah, I mean, I wish him the best in all his future endeavors, all that stuff. I thought he was a pretty solid caster. I definitely wasn't expecting this, so it'll be interesting to see who the CDL decides to bring in to replace him. One thing that they could do, I don't think necessarily they might do it, but it's definitely something that would be interesting for some old heads like me, is maybe Nameless gets off the analyst desk and forms a casting duo with Study. They kind of played together in their playing days, so that could be an interesting duo if that's what they decide to do. But yeah, that's probably the biggest takeaway is obviously we're gonna be seeing some new talent on the broadcast on a regular basis. So yeah, good luck, Lando, and we'll be interested to see who the league decides to replace him with.
Yeah, I think the challengers commentators, they're escaping me off the top of my head.
I hold shift.
Yeah, I know they commentated for the Challengers finals. They were actually in, where were they last year? Las Vegas. And they were commentating on the main stage. So like that was a cool moment, I'm sure, for them. And I think it would make a lot of sense, especially with how many Challengers players are kind of coming up through the ranks and making their CDL debuts. It would make sense for them to get that opportunity. But I could also see what you're saying and shifting people that are already in another role on the broadcast into that slot. And obviously, Nameless and Steady have a really good friendship and former teammates and everything. So that would be pretty cool to see. Two more people that are also stepping away. One is Neptune. He's stepping away from COD, but he is going back to Halo to play in the next season to try to, I guess, become a Halo pro once again. So he's obviously had a very up and down CDL career. He had that injury that really no one knew about until the end of the season with New York, and he got benched during that season. He was also with LAG, I believe, at some point. So it's just been a kind of up and down time for him as a pro. But I wish him the best of luck, obviously, because he showed a lot of promise at times, and maybe he's just more comfortable with Halo, so that might be the way to go. Did you have anything for that?
Yeah, no, wishing him the best. We've seen the one comparison that really comes to mind for me is Frosty.
Yeah.
I don't think Frosty ended up spending as much time as Neptune did in the league, but Frosty obviously won a couple of those online tournaments with Florida and Pharaoh in that squad in MW 2019. So yeah, and then Frosty ended up going back to Halo. He obviously did very well in Halo. Came to COD, won a couple of those initial tournaments. Then went back to Halo. So I don't really know Neptune's Halo history as well, but will be interesting to see if he finds success in that game. Even someone like Formal winning a world championship after having such a successful career in COD, started in Halo, came to COD, had a really successful career, went back to Halo, won a world championship there. So, some cool stories of that recently for Halo players coming to COD, leaving COD, going back to Halo, finding success. So maybe Neptune will add himself to that list. But that's definitely what if I was him, at least that would be what I would aspire to do in Halo. So best of luck to him on that journey.
Yeah, I mean, back-to-back years. We had Formal last year winning the World Championship and Frosty this year winning the World Championship in Halo. So maybe Neptune can make that 3 years in a row where a former COD pro wins the World Championship. So that would be cool. Last thing that we have on the docket is Havok. We have spoken at length on this podcast about how much we like Havok, and specifically kind of like his content creation back in the day, in BO3 specifically, I think. And he announced this actually yesterday that he is stepping away from competitive Call of Duty. He had been slotted into a Challengers roster with Assault, Exceed, and Brack. And obviously that roster has been kind of thrown out of whack because Assault is now going to LAG reportedly. And with Havok stepping away, they were going to bring in Journey to replace him. So kind of weird with the Challenger stuff. But I watched a little bit of Colt's stream yesterday, and he essentially said that it was foolish of him to think that he could do content creation and Challengers at the same time. I just think it was too much to do both and kind of enjoy the benefits of both, because I'm sure he loves competing, but it's also a lot of times, even if you want to stream scrims, like we were saying earlier, there is a sacrifice of the content creation. You can't put as much time, you can't put as much effort. You're doing a lot of other stuff, playing S&D, that's essentially cutting into your content creation time. And I don't think that he could do both of those things at the same time. So he's stepping away. He did not close the door on potentially returning at some point, but he seems pretty satisfied with just streaming and creating YouTube videos and whatnot. So that's great for him. I'm glad that he's kind of one of the few pros that aren't like, you know, a phase or optic guy that has kind of made it in terms of creating a little niche for himself in terms of competitive COD and in the streaming game. He's been like, you have literally brought him up so many times about how much you liked watching him in BO3. And I think there are a lot of people like that just like watching him and aren't necessarily a fan of his teams or whatever. And he's been in and out of the league at certain points over the past few years, but he still has a really loyal fan base. And I'm very happy for him. If this is going to make him happier and healthier, then I'm all good with that. What did you think of Havok announcing that he's not playing this coming season?
Yeah, obviously, I would love to see him continue to compete because I still think he's one of the best S&D players we've had in the league, and you know, I just it's tough to say one of the best S&D players because we have so many strong S&D players now, but he's really good at S&D. And that's what you were mentioning. I just remember his 1v1 streams at like 10 in the morning on weekdays during IW, and I remember he had this plastic pair of sunglasses he used to put on like upside down, and he's just a funny guy, and I love that stuff, and I wish him the best. If hopefully it's not the end of his competitive career, I would obviously love for him to get another shot back in the league, and you know, that sort of deal. But if it doesn't happen and he sticks to streaming and content creation, I'm wishing him the best in that regard as well.
Yeah, he actually was streaming 1v1s today. I saw him tweet about it. I didn't end up watching it, but I thought of you when I saw the tweet.
I'll have to tune in next time I see it then.
Yeah, so yeah, best of luck to him. Best of luck to Neptune and Lando. Quite a few people stepping away from competitive COD over the past few days, which is unfortunate, but you know, that's just the cycle of things. I remember in what was that, BO3, when that was like the first year of the CWL that was run by ESL. I remember Merc and TP like retiring or stepping away at that time. And we've seen like Aches and even before then, Big Timer leaving. So it's just kind of a cycle that continues to happen. It, you know, the game keeps moving on, but players are just like, yeah, I'm good. I don't want to do it anymore, and that's very understandable. I don't think we had anything else. Did you have anything before we get out here?
I think we're good.
All right, sweet. Yeah, thank you guys for listening and watching. It has been we're almost out of the off season, which is crazy because this has been a very, very long off season. But thank you for supporting us throughout the off season, and now we finally made it to MW3, and within a month we'll be talking about some CDL matches, giving our vaunted predictions, the predictions that you guys always love. I'm sure just us predicting random matches that we have no idea how they'll actually play on the day of the match because we do them like 4 days in advance. But thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. We are on YouTube and Twitch if you want to catch the next live stream. So you could go to twitch.tv/Ego Chall Podcast, or you can go to the Ego Chall Podcast YouTube. We live stream there each week or each episode. And then you could also find all of the videos, all of the podcasts for the entire show. We're 95 episodes in, and they're all on YouTube if you want to go find them and watch them. You can also follow or like the feed at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, Amazon Music, a lot of places to listen to the podcast. Yeah, so thank you guys for listening and watching, and make sure to follow the Twitters at JBink with 2Ks, at Pres Byers, podcasters at Ego Chall Podcast. Probably shooting for an episode next week. We'll see how things go, but we'll at the very least be back in 2 weeks, if not, which is I think after Thanksgiving. So, you know, we're getting closer to the holidays, so the schedule will be weird even then. But, you know, thank you guys for the support, and I will now turn it over to Bink.
Yeah, I don't got much to add. Thank you guys, as always, for the support. We will see you when we see you next, and until then, remember to send the chow.